countdown, but we'll just not even do the countdown and we'll just go live. So we're live. So hey, Liz.
Hey, Michael Romaine.
How are you?
I am doing well. It's busy Thursday. What day is it? Friday? See, I think it's Thursday.
You're doing too much if you don't know what day it is.
I'm doing the most. The absolute
all the time. So I wanted to talk to you about, and I just want to get right into it. I know you're a busy person. You gotta leave in 45 minutes. So people may not know, but you are about to open your own grocery. You're about to build a grocery store from the flow up on the west side of Chicago, Chicago Avenue, in a place that has not had a grocery store in a long time. Definitely not an independent grocery store like yours. You're doing it in the middle of a pandemic.
I think the last one the last independent left that strip in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't even in Chicago back then.
Right. And it's a middle of a pandemic, and you've only been doing this for 4 years?
3. So just made 3 years in January.
3 years, which is crazy to me. People in Maywood, however, some people will, maybe a lot of people will, but others may not. Others may not realize that you were in Maywood a few years ago. You actually wanted to build your store in Maywood.
It was definitely a very it was like a very significant consideration. So it was something that I was leaning towards for probably the first year and a half of our operations. So I started 40 Acres, and I technically got the licensing and whatever you need, the tax ID or whatever, in 2017, and then launched to the public January 20th of 2018 at Sankofa Cultural Arts and Business Center. We did a pop-up market there that day. That was a Saturday. It was actually kind of like a warmish Saturday. It's probably 40 degrees. Gosh, I remember it like it was yesterday. And the market was from 9 to 1. And we brought in just all kinds of fruits and vegetables. There was a bunch, like bananas, apples, 7 kinds of apples. It was overkill, really overdid it. And opened up the space, and people came, and it was open to the public for them to shop. And one of the shoppers that day was a woman who had grown up in Maywood. And this was 2018. Maywood had lost the Aldi in late 2016. So it was about a little over a year since Maywood had lost its last grocery store. And she said, "Oh my gosh, this market is amazing. The place that really needs this is Maywood." So after that first market day, I got in touch with her, and I was like, "Well, I'd like to do another one. You said Maywood could use this?" And she said, "Absolutely. Let me put you in touch with somebody." And she put me in touch with village trustee Isaiah Brandon. And within several weeks, he was able to get us a location. The village did robocalls to let people know what was going on. I passed out flyers. And we had over 100 people show up to our first pop-up market in Maywood. I think it was February 17th or something like that of 2018. And it went so well that we did it monthly through June. And I think with the exception of 1 month where the weather was just terrible, the location wasn't great, we always had 100 people or more show up to shop for affordable fresh food from 40 Acres Fresh Market. So we had this really, really engaged and ready customer base in Maywood. And I'll be honest, the customer base we got in Maywood was much better than what we were getting in Austin. So when it came time to say, okay, I can't stay in this state of just popping up places. If I want to grow this business, we have to put down roots someplace. It was a really tough decision to decide between the city of Chicago and Maywood, because the trade-offs were Maywood has a better customer. This customer is showing me far more than Austin customers at this point in time. that they want this, that they're ready for this, that they will support this. But Chicago had like an easier pathway in terms of licensing, funding, etc. And so that's the direction I went with, and was like, I just have to work harder to cultivate this customer base. But even after we stopped doing the pop-ups in Maywood, and even after I had decided, okay, Austin's where we're going to do our store, I was still doing produce stands at Veggie RX, first at the Maywood Clinic over on Roosevelt. I would join Windy City Harvest. They asked for 40 acres to a produce stand along with their farm stand. And then when it moved to the Parks building, we were there as well. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And so we still deliver to Maywood. So delivery is still available every day. But yeah, it's changed with the pandemic. But Maywood's always been on our radar, and it's always been very close to my heart, simply because we would not have grown and gotten the traction that we have over the last 3 years if Maywood didn't really give us that great start.
So I want to kind of deconstruct some of what you said.
I said a lot. I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
And because I want to like allow people to get an understanding of what it takes to build a grocery store, to be in the grocery store market, and then kind of talk. I also want you to talk about the dynamics of the grocery store business.
Yeah.
So explain to me how you got into the space where you are now, with respect to where'd you get the food, where'd you get the expertise, where'd you get the knowledge to even think that you could do this. And then I also want you to tell the story about how you wound up in Austin the first time that you got off of that CTA bus and realized that you were on the west side of Chicago, and then how that sort of resonated enough to prompt you to do something like start 40 acres.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions all in one. So I guess I'll start with the origin. I'm sure people have already heard this. Mm-hmm. Back in 2016, I was still working in corporate America. I was doing some like mystery shopping on the side, and one of the shops that I'd signed up to do said it was like at 50 something, 5200, 5300 West Chicago Avenue. I had no clue where that was. All I knew was like, okay, I'm not far from Chicago Avenue, so I can take the bus there. So I hop on the bus, and I assumed that because it was so far west that I was going to be heading towards O'Hare. That's not the case. So I get off at where I'm told, which is the corner of Chicago and Laramie, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, vacant lot, vacant retail, boarded up building, liquor store, fried chicken, McDonald's. Oh crap, I need cash to do this errand. Where's the bank? And look on my phone, I can't find a bank. So I'm cheap. I really hate corner store ATMs because the fees they charge. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to the drugstore like a CVS or a Rite Aid, Rite Aid is very New York, CVS or a Walgreens, and get a piece of candy and get cash back. Well, oh crap, there's not one of those in walking distance of this where I am either. And then the last one was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the grocery store and do it. It might take a little longer because, people with lots of carts with food, I have to be behind somebody, but, I'm just going to do it that way. And then I was like, oh, there's no grocery store in walking distance of this either. And then it's like, wait a second, where the heck am I? This doesn't make any sense. I'm on a major commercial corridor, and you have, basic goods and services related to money, health, and food that are not accessible. This doesn't make sense to me because at the time, and currently, I live in Westtown, and I've always lived in neighborhoods in Chicago that were well accessed. I lived in the South Loop, I lived in Lakeview, and those neighborhoods are an embarrassment of riches. You walk out your door, and it's like, not do I have a grocery store, it's which one do I want to choose from? Do I want to go to Jewel or Trader Joe's? They're both a block apart, and I'm like 2 blocks from each. So not having that was just jarring. So the experience stayed with me, and I started noticing the inequality in Chicago more. I started noticing when I'm shopping in my neighborhood and I'm getting great deals on fresh produce, and I'm like, well, why doesn't this exist over there? And eventually that idea of why doesn't this exist on the West Side became 40 Acres Fresh Market. It became this idea like, I can make this exist. There's a customer there. I see people there. People eat. People need food. Why, like, nobody's there. I'd be the first mover. First mover advantage is something you learn in business school. And so I was like,
yeah,
something I want to try.
What first mover advantage is?
First mover advantage is the first entrant into a market has an advantage because you're the only business that customers are patronizing in that industry. If you can get the customer, then you're the first one. You have all the market share, so you have that opportunity, but before any other person comes in, to get a loyal customer base. That's what they mean by like the first mover advantage.
Because you went to the University of Chicago Business School.
Yeah.
You worked for Microsoft for some time.
Yeah.
You're also working you were in corporate working with the largest grocers and food retailers in the world.
Yeah. So I worked for General Mills right after undergrad. I worked there from 2002 to 2012. So obviously I'm on the vendor side, but my customers were Super Value, Publix, Spartan, Nash Finch. Well, now Spartan, Nash Finch. When they were my account, they were just Spartan. Del Hayes, who owns Food Lion in Hannaford on the East Coast. So yeah, I had a lot of adjacent experience to grocery through that career for the first 10 years of my post-collegiate career.
Mm-hmm. And which was proved helpful to what you're doing now, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's things I take. It's very different. Like running a grocery business has very different economics than selling food to a grocer. Like the labor factor is completely like different. The margins are a little different. The volume you have to do, there's similarities, so it was helpful, but it wasn't like, oh, you can just enter this and know exactly what you're doing. No, it didn't work like that. And I think that not understanding that I didn't know enough and that I didn't know what I was doing is what prompted me to start 40 Acres the way I did, which is, a lot of people, when they want to start a new business, actually, it's kind of funny. I was watching Teen Mom last night, Teen Mom OG, and Caitlin has gotten into microblading and she wants to open up her own shop. So she wants to start her own business. So she's done her training and now she's looking at spaces to rent and renovate and turn into this, salon where she's going to own and do her work. Well, that's what a lot of new business owners do. You have to find a place to operate out of. Well, for me, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So is there something a little less high commitment than signing like a 5-year lease and getting equipment and getting a small business loan and all this for something I don't know? So starting with pop-up markets was a way to start really small and learn. And one of the most complex supply chains and inventory management, and produce is one of like the hardest departments to run in a grocery store because you have a product that has a very short shelf life. You've got to figure out how to move it, how to bring it in, how to order, how to buy, all this stuff. So it was really good that in Chicago, like the easiest food to sell is whole uncut produce. The city pretty much leaves you alone. So that was the easiest way to jump into this business with a lot of a safety net.
In which your safety net was you basically saved money from working at Microsoft and
yeah. Well, any kind of entrepreneurial. What I meant by safety net was like if it didn't work, right? If after 2 or 3 months I was like, I just don't like it. Yeah. I don't want to do this. I don't have a lease to get out of. I don't have staff to lay off. I don't have equipment to liquidate. Mm-hmm. inventory to liquidate or very minimal inventory. So it's a very small commitment to spend, let's say, $2,500 to $3,000 to do a pop-up market versus like the hundreds of thousands to like potentially seven figures it can cost to open even a small grocery store.
Hold on one second. Reneen, can you hear me? Okay, I'm just making sure that Liz is going to be out in like 12:45. I want to make sure that you had a time frame for when I bring you in, so that you don't have to just feel free to listen to the conversation. I just didn't want to leave you out there in the cold hanging. So I think that's a good pro tip, though. And I want to put a quick pin in that for future entrepreneurs, because I'm similar to you in that I got into a space that nobody else was in. You know, there are no other really any other competitors in this local news space in the west suburbs where I'm at. And
you're that deal.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't know how big of a deal it is, but
well, I mean, honestly, when I first started, everybody was like, "You need to talk to Michael Romaine." Michael Romaine is the person who, if you want a story written, if you want to get the word out, it's Michael Romaine. Like, he covers this whole entire.
But to your point, I started with the WordPress blog, and so you know, with future entrepreneurs, it's really important to have that, you know, low effort, high yield sort of thing, so that, you know, if it fails, all I lose is the WordPress account, or if it fails, all I lose is like $100 for making sure that I bought the domain name or something like that.
Exactly.
You know, that's what you're talking about.
And I wouldn't call it low effort, because I mean, I felt like I put a lot of effort in from day one. It's like really low resource or low overhead. You want like really low overhead. Like I will not say that I ever ran markets by myself, especially the big pop-up markets, but I had a network of friends who I talked to about what I wanted to do, who I told what I wanted to do, and were like, "I'd help you with that." And I'm like, "Great, I'll take you up on that." And I sure did. I abused the hell out of my friends for like 6 months.
Really serious, I will say.
I
said your follow-up game is serious.
Thank you. You have to.
You have to be. So you're in this space where nobody else is, and you know, kind of explains how within 3 or 4 years you're able to grow to scale, you know, this quickly. So I want to kind of go back to when you were still doing the pop-ups. When I first heard about you, and I actually was at the first pop-up that you were at in Maywood.
You were.
Some food, and then we did some coverage.
Great story. Thank you for that story. That story was awesome. The pictures, everything.
Yeah, and so, you know, it was great. It happened another time the following month at the Maywood Multipurpose Building, right?
So the first one was at the Maywood Multipurpose Building. The second one was actually at the Quinn Center at St. Eulalia. I remember knocking on the door, and it was the first day of the executive director, Kristen Mighty. It was her first day, and I started talking really fast, and I was like, "We need a space for this market," and she was like, "Set up an appointment with me," and I did, and somehow, some way, she was able to get us the space. We got it for like a super low cost, and it was really awesome. Like I said, Maywood just found a way to support like month after month after month. So
how many months were you doing the pop-ups in Maywood?
I think we did 6. So we did 5. We did February, March, April, May, June. So it was 5 months of pop-ups through basically the entire, like half of winter and the entire spring of 2018. And it doesn't even feel that long ago, but it's coming up on 3 years since we've done those markets in Maywood, but people still remember.
And then you stopped. Why did the effort kind of fizzle out?
So at that time, I had chosen to do a 30-day retail pilot at the Boombox, which is this like pop-up space on Chicago. Yep, on Chicago Avenue in Chicago. I was going to try it out. I was like, I'm going to try my hand at retail. Like, what does it? It's one thing to do a pop-up market, be someplace for an afternoon or like for 8 hours in a day? What's it like to run this business day in, day out, open every day, have a staff, because I had staff, have to pay rent in a location. What does that look like? And it looked pretty horrible. It was just not a good look. But I wanted to go out and do that. And afterwards I was exhausted. I worked every single day that month. It was really disheartening to have set all of that up, to have invested that much money and time to some days only see 3 or 4 people come through. So I just needed a break. I needed to regroup. I was like, okay, I've lost a lot of money. Like, how do I regroup? Luckily, that very month, that August, I wound up getting a grant, which kind of reimbursed those expenses.
Where from?
University of Chicago. So they had an alumni like career exploration type of program that you could apply, and they accepted me and 40 acres into that. And so that was like the first blessing. I have to say that there have been many times where I just wanted to quit, where I've been like, okay, I think I'm done. And there's been like a nice, good quitting point, and then like something good will happen, or an opportunity will come, or we'll get funding. And it's like, God is like, nope, you're not quitting yet. So that's what happened in 2018. So we stopped running markets after July 2018. We didn't run our next market until May of 2019. So it was almost a year before we popped up again. I did some delivery service, cut that off, but I really kind of needed to regroup and figure out, if I was going to open this store, how am I going to get from where I'm at to this store? Because it wasn't happening off the revenue of pop-up markets. Like, I was running those markets and basically just making back what I'd already put in. I wasn't making any, it wasn't like this pot of money was growing every single month that I could now go get a store with. So I was kind of burnt out. I just had to really regroup and figure out how to do it, what I was doing better.
And so you've actually gotten a series of grants to help with what you're doing. So I want to kind of lay this out. There's the private grants that you've gotten from various, like the American Heart Foundation. The city has been incredibly influential.
Not yet. We think they will. The city hasn't been yet, but the city has the potential to be. It's been the state of Illinois. Federal government.
Explain that sort of labyrinth of funding that has helped you get to where you are now.
Yeah. So I think like one thing is, when I first started, this funding was not there. It wasn't really available. I think the only thing that existed was this Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. And I just wasn't ready to apply for that yet.
Explaining that's the city's under Rama program.
So the city of Chicago has a small business grant called Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. It's targeted towards key neighborhoods that they're trying to spur small business development in, Austin on the west side being one of them. And you can get up to, I think the small grant pool is like, you can get up to half of your capital expenses. That's like your construction, your equipment, et cetera, paid for in a reimbursable grant from the city, up to $250,000. So that's pretty nice, a nice deal. They also have a large grant pool, but you have to go through City Hall in order to, you have to go through, City Council has to approve you for larger amounts. So
that a lot of the reimbursable is key, because if you don't have the money to up anyway, and
that's why I wouldn't even apply for it. I'm like, I don't have the funding to put up front to then get reimbursed, and I just wasn't ready yet. Like, we didn't have a space, we didn't have anything to show the city that like we could actually complete this project. So, and it's the early days of Neighborhood Opportunity Fund was basically like, city was giving money to anybody who said they had a business and could get their alderman's approval. So a lot of the projects never got off the ground because they didn't have the funding, or they didn't really have this. They kind of had a site in mind, or they had a handshake deal, but then the site would fall through. So,
and like, you said earlier, the city was need to do a better job of vetting these businesses that they were giving money to, and they just weren't doing that very effectively.
Yeah, so the city wasn't doing the best. They didn't have the best vetting system up front. It was a good idea. It just, the execution was terrible. And so I think that they've improved that a lot since then. But when I started in 2018, that was really the only thing available. I knew about the University of Chicago Booth School of Business Alumni Adventure Challenge grant, but I knew when I first started, that wasn't coming up until, I think the application opened in May or June. So I just started with my own funding and it was just like, okay, just make this money back if you want to keep going. And then I applied and I got it. And so I put that towards more pop-ups. Then all of a sudden in 2019 is when like the deluge really started happening. Actually, Proviso Partners for Health, one of the members of that group made me aware of a grant through the USDA called Healthy Food.
It's in Maywood. That's a Maywood.
Yes, Proviso Partners for Health is a Maywood organization. Lena Hatch,
Loretta Brown,
Loretta Brown, Jack Herrnstein Perez, or is it Perez Herrnstein? I don't remember, but whatever. Jack, like all of them, like they do really amazing work to make sure that like food access is at top of mind in Maywood, and doing everything from the Giving Garden to Veggie RX. They're a small but mighty team. Anyway, they put me on to the USDA HFFI grant. I had been talking to them as well as Westside Health Authority. And Westside Health Authority is a nonprofit or community development organization over on the west side of Chicago in the Austin neighborhood. And they were just a little bit further along in their ability and readiness for partnership. So I partnered with them and we came up with like a plan of action to move from pop-ups to full-scale brick and mortar store. And we pitched that to the HFFI grant, and we're recipients of the 2019. We're still in that grant cycle. It's running about 2 years, 2019 HFFI grant. And then,
How much was that grant?
That was $185,000.
Okay.
And that went to everything from pop-up markets to a lot of the pre-development. We've done our market study. We paid for, the first blush of architectural designs, architectural measurements, site visits, all of the pre-development work that a lot of people are like, oh, when are you building the store? I'm like, there's a lot that goes into it before you even break ground. So a lot of that work has gotten paid for through that grant. Then in May, I was on Facebook and somebody had posted that the American Heart Association had opened up a social impact fund for Chicago. And it just so happened that it was 3 zip codes and 60651 was one of them. And 60651 is where we want to have our store. It was where we were doing a lot of our pop-up markets. So applied for that and got $150,000 through American Heart Association. And that was their first investment. And thus they've since made subsequent investments, which have been awesome. So that was 2019. And then June of 2019, I applied for the State of Illinois Small Minority-Owned Business Grant and found out later that year that we'd been awarded, and then found out in 2020 that we actually got $500,000 through that. That is a strictly capital grant, so that can only go towards construction. So then the race was on to find a space that we could, renovate and outfit. And then also in 2020, we received a grant through the Oprah Winfrey Charitable Foundation as our part of Live Healthy Chicago. So we got significant amount there, over $100,000 there. So, and then we've gotten smaller grants along the way, like one of my favorite, Live Visible, through Live Cafe and their coalition gave us, I think, like a $5,000 grant.
Owner, Proviso West along.
Yeah, Rashida Washington, Rashida Graham Washington, I think, she's really like paying forward, like the fact that she's been able to establish and run this successful business and wants to invest in and power forward other Black female-owned businesses. And so 40 Acres is one of them. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, she has a red backpack fund. So we were a recipient of that grant. And those grant funds we used towards the purchase of our space. So in 2020.
Oh, go ahead.
October 2020, we finally found the location for the brick and mortar store. And so we announced that, hey, we have the site, and now we're in the development of making that site into a viable grocery store.
So I'm glad you ran through all of those series of grants and funding mechanisms that allowed you to get to where you are, to breaking ground on a potential grocery store on the West Side. And that's a good segue into what was missing on the Maywood side of the equation to put you in the position where you would have been building in Maywood as opposed to building a grocery store in Austin. What did Chicago have? And you listed a lot of that already, but I kind of want you to be a little bit more explicit. What kind of supports did you find in Chicago that you didn't find in Maywood? And how can Maywood in the future attract somebody, if it's not your second location, somebody else, a replica of you? How can we attract somebody, like you in the future? If we, maybe mimic or mirrored some of what the city did.
So I think one thing in
question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, one thing in the city, like, I think the first thing I needed was space, and Maywood had that initially. Like the building on Fifth Avenue, the old Boys and Girls Club.
Purpose building.
The multi-purpose building, like that was perfect space. But then our advocate or our champion for getting in there, like, had other commitments, like understandable other commitments. And there was, it only resided with one person in Maywood. So when that person couldn't push it forward, there was no one else to pick up the mantle. And then when somebody wanted to pick up the mantle, there was a lot of disorganization and a lot of, there was a lot of,
be as political as you need to be.
It seemed political, and there wasn't a lot of collaboration. There wasn't enough collaboration to bring back the pop-up markets. She said, say it. There wasn't enough collaboration at the village leadership level to bring it back. And there wasn't the infrastructure on the nonprofit or private side to do it through one of those organizations.
So what I'm hearing, and sorry to cut you off, you only got 10 minutes. I'm trying to get as much out of you as I possibly can.
No problem.
So what I'm hearing is that what you found in the city, the supports you found were, they were governmental. We heard Neighborhood Opportunity Fund.
I've never gotten the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. It's just that that's a pot of money that I have been cultivating a relationship with the city so that they know 40 acres is coming. Mm-hmm. I know DPD. I met with DPD.
Communication with bureaucracy in City Hall.
I've been in communication with the bureaucracy in City Hall, and they've given me a ton of technical support in, here is the steps you need to take. Here is what we need to see from you in order to give you a yes when you get in front of us. They've been very good about that. And they have this pot of money. They're like, it's here, and we'll tell you when to apply for it. You just have to be ready with these 5 things. And so it's on me to get those 5 things together, but at least I have a roadmap. I had no roadmap in Maywood, not from leadership. And there wasn't a way to gradually build the way I've been doing in Chicago. There wasn't an avenue for that in Maywood. And as I said, the pop-up markets in Maywood were great. I don't know if anybody had been to one, but I think like the feedback I got was like, pricing is great, service is great. We love the chefs that come in. But there wasn't the urgency, and there wasn't the commitment to keeping them going. And it's very difficult to ask unpaid resources. So like put that all on PP4H or put that all on the, what's it called? The Quinn Center, because the people there are paid to do a specific job, not necessarily incubate a small business. Like Maywood just didn't have the formal and informal governmental, nonprofit, private. Oh, thanks, Connie. They just didn't have that infrastructure and that framework and that network to support 40 acres needed at that time.
Mhm.
But they had the customer. So it's super, super hard because I'm like, this customer is super supportive. Like, so, but as a business, there was just no path forward in Maywood.
I wanted you to talk a bit about the economics of grocery stores and
Yeah.
why they tend to. We posted last week maybe about a second Pete's Fresh Market going into Oak Park. Oak Park already has 8, 9 other grocery retailers, and that's probably on the low end. They probably got like 10.
I can think of what, so there's the Pete's, there's Jewel's, there's 2 Jewel's, I think.
They're Pete's, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's,
Trader Joe's, Carnival, Sugar Beet.
Sugar Beet. I'm missing some. There is the place on. This is actually River Forest though.
There's Fresh Time in River Forest. I'm not counting River Forest. I think there's like 6 or 7 stores in
large supermarket stores.
in Oak Park. So it is well resourced. The only part of Oak Park that's not very well resourced is the northeast side of Oak Park. And they did have a supermarket that lasted all of 4 months. But neither here nor there. Basically, a well-resourced area is getting another resource. That's the point. And so then the question becomes, well, why aren't areas that don't have these resources getting them? And a couple things. One, grocery is one of the hardest businesses to run. It's extremely difficult because it's very low margin, and so you need very high volume. So for a lot of these stores, they have to be making $250,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a week in revenue in order to be sustainable.
Are you comfortable with sharing what you said your store would need to make once it's up and running in revenue?
Yeah. So I will say that like the models for like the like Jewel, Mariano's, those ones, they're running a very large store model. And in that model, they need that kind of revenue. I have decided to run a smaller store model, keep the overhead lower, less staff, less product, just less everything, but keep it to the point where people still can get the basics that they need. You can still get your produce, your meat, you can get dry, refrigerated, frozen, a little bit of prepared food, some household goods. It's just not going to have every single SKU of every single thing. But if you need to run in there and pick up a few things, we're the perfect place. So we're trying to run a smaller store model instead of capturing that primary grocery trip, capture that fill-in trip. They're more often. And kind of present ourselves and position ourselves in the market that way. That way we only need like maybe $70,000 a week to be sustainable.
Even your smaller model needs $70,000 a week.
Yeah. And there's stores that have tried that and they needed, I think there's been, not here in Chicago, but across the country, even that to me, from where we are, that feels like a really heavy lift. I'm like, whoa, $70,000 a week? It's scary.
Are you familiar with the old Maywood Market that's often talked about? That was on.
Yes, I'm familiar. I wasn't around when that was open, but I have heard much about it.
From your perspective of what you heard, why do you think, based on your limited information, but your expertise in this area?
I've heard many things. I think from customers, I've heard, they were too high, the quality wasn't good, the pricing was too high, the quality wasn't good, and I think the third thing I heard is
didn't support it.
Yeah, was that it didn't have, people didn't want to go there because it didn't have everything they needed. They wanted to use it as their one-stop shop, their big shopping trip, And that's not how people were using it. That's not how people wanted to use it. That's not how people expected to use it. So I think what happened, if I can kind of like synthesize from everything, is that one, you had somebody who owning it and running it who was not in the grocery industry, did not have that expertise, did not have that experience, which is super important. Like you can't just be like, I run a dry cleaner and I can do grocery. It's,
give me that tip money, millions in tips so I can build a grocery store.
Yeah. Like it sounds good, but if you don't have the right, it's a skill set. And if you don't have that expertise in-house leading it, they're going to make all kinds of wrong decisions. 2, I don't know who their suppliers were, where they were getting their supply from. 3, I think that maybe they had too much store for how people were going to use it. So I am very, very cognizant of store size. I'm like, I don't want to be a millimeter above X number of square feet. I'm telling people up front, you're not going to find everything here. Go to Costco, do your big pantry load, but I know you're going to run out of something in 2 weeks and you're not going to want to go all the way back to Costco for it. You're going to come to 40 acres and you're going to pick up.
Interesting point. Even if Maywood got a smaller grocery store like yours, for instance, a small grocery store, people would still need to go to these larger supermarkets for other things.
But what you do is you seed the grocery industry with the smaller stores first. Is you show that those smaller stores can do gangbusters, that those specialty stores, those niche stores can survive, can do volume, can be profitable. And what happens is that grocery store becomes an anchor, and like a restaurant comes near it, or a dry cleaner, or a nail shop, or just any kind of like or a medical, a private doctor's office is right there, because the grocery store brings the foot traffic and those businesses want to draft off of that. Large business follows small business, and then retail starts to cluster. So when you're a first mover, one of the scariest things, if you're a first mover in retail, is you don't get the benefits of other retail near you. So you better have a really strong marketing game. You better have really strong word of mouth. You better have something that like people are going to like just come to you. And the problem with grocery is that once people get in their habit of where they shop, just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. And if people are already used to going to Oak Park, River Forest, or whatever, you have to have a very, very, very strong marketing campaign, a very, very strong market position, and strong differentiators in order to draw that business back to you. You don't need a ton of it. You don't have to steal. I don't have to steal all of the business that's going in Austin that's going to Oak Park. I only need to steal a fraction of it, but I still have to have something that motivates people to be stolen, if that makes sense.
Right. And for you, what is that?
So for us, we are firmly in the fresh market niche. So we have made our name on affordable, high quality produce. So that's another thing, is that we're opening our doors with a customer base that's already following us. So a lot of small businesses, a lot of grocers don't start the way we did. They used to back in the day. Like Pete's started as a produce stand. And so when they put walls around it, people were like, okay, cool, I've already shopped here. So we're kind of doing that old school model of like the produce stand that becomes a store. But so it's that we're already known for produce. We want to have a really high quality meat department. So like full service meat counter, so you can get your cuts, you can get like I used to love to go to the butcher near my place and get chicken bones because I wanted to make my own homemade broth. Like we'd be able to do that. And then have some like specialty prepared items that we're really known for that we do really well, whether that's like juices and smoothies or paninis or whatever. We don't even need a whole kitchen just to be able to like make some really special things that people are like, 40 Acres like makes these awesome things and I'm going to go there for them. And then while they're there, people are going to pick up, you're naturally going to pick up things like, oh crap, I got my veggies. I need a bottle of wine. Great. I'm going to pick up a bottle of wine. I also need a pack of meat. I'm going to get that. And I need some pasta. So you have like these 7 items, you're taking them to the counter and it rings up at like $25. And that's like what we need to hit. It's like maybe a $25 average basket ring. So we just need less, but you can still, but like you feel as though like you're getting a lot for your money. we're positioning ourselves in terms of value and convenience, so you're not in huge lines. And also just our level of service is second to none. Like I pride my staff on our whole thing is we are here to delight our customers. And that's what we live to do.
I know you got to go, but yeah. I want you to kind of leave with 30 seconds of advice to Maywood, particularly our government. We're in an election season, and we residents want certain things, and top among them is a grocery store. What would you tell government leaders, not just the candidates, but people who are staff who have staff positions in Village Hall?
I would say a couple things. One, get your expertise up. Whoever's running your business development department, they need to have excellent follow-up. Follow-up is key.
Expertise.
Yes. Like, do they have the expertise to do this? Do they know how to take a business from infancy and startup and nurture it to a brick and mortar? Do they have the processes and systems and a step-by-step checklist, kind of like the city of Chicago had for me, for what these businesses need to do in order to get their licensing, in order to get this, that, and the third?
Roadmap.
Yeah, a roadmap. Do they have a roadmap for people? Do you have, and then I would say for village leadership, it's also about collaboration amongst each other. Like, it doesn't matter who gets credit for what, like, or whose idea something was, if the overall benefit is to the village of Maywood. Don't be so caught up in, I don't work with this person, or, well, this was your idea, so I used to like it, but now I have questions. Like, that's what 40 Acres got caught up in. And then the pandemic hit, and we're a year later, and like, I will say this, we could have been back doing pop-ups in Maywood by November of 2019. And that would have given us November, December, January, February. And we would have been there not just one day, but we were going to do it like a whole entire weekend. That could have been popped off by November, and it didn't happen because of politics. And it was super disappointing, because seeing people who had once supported us now questioning the need for us to be there just didn't hit right. And also, the people who we were working with to bring us back weren't collaborating with the people who brought us there in the first place. And it was something I said. I was like, look, people are going to feel some kind of way. I'm not new. You're not discovering something new. So bring in who did this before. And if you say, nah, I don't have to, or I don't want to, you have to accept responsibility for some of that political blowback. But I mean, and it just means that other places are going to pass you by because you're not taking opportunities that are right there for you. And then for anyone in Maywood, I would say, stop waiting for the village to bring you a grocery store. I just don't know if you guys, if the village has, I don't know if the village is in the position to do that yet. But as residents, if you have a sense of business, or this is something you want to learn, start super small. Like I said, produce is the easiest thing to sell in Chicago. There's a really great wholesale market. There's gardens you can get food from. Try even organizing a farmer's market in Maywood. Try again. And it's a two-sided market. Even if the village offered funding to support a farmer's market, a small farmer's market, maybe like 2 vendors, helped with the advertising, because that's what I got from the city of Chicago. City of Chicago pays 40 Acres to do the Austin Town Hall Market. So basically it's incubating a farmer's market that eventually will be taken over privately, but it's incubating that with 40 Acres in the city of Chicago. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to resources and just supporting like small ventures so that they do have the potential to grow. But I do have to jump because I have to be.
I know. I was going to say on that note, this has been invaluable. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Liz. And
I appreciate you doing this. I hope that a lot of people, or at least I see a few people in the comments. So yeah, I hope you guys got something out of it.
I do too. And I wish you best of luck with what you're doing in Chicago. I know we'll hear more as that development progresses. I just wish there were two of you, and one of you could.
I wish there were two of me. Like most days, I have to hop on this other call, and I have to go out and do deliveries. It's just not the day.
Well, thanks, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you. Hey, Reneen. Oh, you're muted.
Hey, can you hear me?
What you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You may need to get a bit.
Okay, good.
Okay, no, you're fine now. So let everybody know, what you're doing at Roosevelt, your background in District 209, and what you're doing with Village Free Press.
Yeah, so my name is Renina Barbarawi. I'm currently a junior at Roosevelt University in downtown Chicago. I'm double majoring in international studies and journalism with the minor in economics. I work as a writing tutor here. I also am assistant editor at the Torch newspaper, which is the school newspaper. And I also work with cybersecurity. So like I write blogs about like how to, be safe online. And also I just sometimes send out school-wide emails. And also I'm a freelance journalist for the Village Free Press. My background is I'm a Palestinian and American woman. I was born in Palestine, but I came like right after I was born. I haven't visited there for about 11 years. And when I did go, it was like a 2-month summer vacation. But I do hope to take on with my like journalism, I guess, abilities and go there after I graduate and kind of just write about Palestine in general. So yeah.
So far,
also it's District 2. So I'm a Proviso East graduate of 2018. I graduated there. I was very involved within the school. I was always just trying to, I guess, reach myself out and try to help the community because I didn't like the negative stigma and stereotypes that were placed on Proviso East because I felt like a lot of people can blossom despite where they were at. So yeah.
And so for the last month, I would say you've been doing some education articles for Village Free Press, writing about schools and things like that. You did a good article on National Honor Society, which you were a member of when you were in high school, right?
Yeah, I actually was in NHS. I was in National Honor Society since my sophomore year, I believe. Yeah, I think that's when they began allowing you to be in sophomore, be in NHS. But it was Ashraf at the moment. He was, I guess, our coordinator. And so with NHS, we were doing kind of the same stuff with like the drive-bys, just writing letters, just kind of being more involved in the school. So yeah, and now I'm also in the honors program at Roosevelt University. So I take more rigorous courses, which they're not like, I guess it's not more work because I feel like that's like kind of the ideal thinking of like, oh yeah, if you're in the honors program, you're doing more work. It's not that. It's just more of critical thinking and just thinking more creatively. So yeah, I'm taking 2 honors courses right now and I'm also in 7 courses. So 21 credit hours now.
Oh my goodness.
4 jobs. So just a busy student.
You're doing a lot.
Yeah.
How was it? Because you wrote about the first article you wrote for us was about the induction of the recent class of National Honor Society members. And then there were also some people who were graduating out of National Honor Society. How was it, going back to your old high school and writing about something that you were so heavily involved in?
Yeah, so it was really interesting because just saying with also like the Victoria, who's like now in charge of it, she was like super nice and all, and like talking to the students, they just seemed like they had their head on straight and they knew what they were going to do in their future. And it was just like really interesting seeing that there were still similarities, but like within the time of the pandemic and COVID, it's not, it's harder to be like more involved because you can't like actually do communal work because you can't actually be present there. But I still like feel like they're doing a lot even when they're online.
What got you into journalism and what sparked your interest in the field of media? Yeah,
so like ever since I was maybe in kindergarten, when I was like 6 years old, I remember I've always been like a natural born writer. My father, he recently passed away about 7 months ago in July, rest his soul. But he was also a writer, and he used to like write his own books, and like sometimes he would even write children books and stuff. And he was just like a really phenomenal figure within like the Palestinian community, and just, you know, just an inspiration to a lot of people being able to, he was like the first person to come from our village to America, and he actually gave like a lot of visas and green cards to a lot of people, so they still thank him for that. But yeah, he kind of just sparked my interest of being a writer, I guess. And like even when I was in kindergarten, I was, as I was stating, I remember winning like second place for like writing and like drawing a book at like some big national author thing. And like ever since then, I've just always loved writing. Like even in high school, it's just writing was just like always coming naturally to me. Like I could just write articles or, you know, write papers within like 30 minutes. And I would see like a lot of other students who struggled, or like, you know, they needed more time, which is not bad at all. But I kind of then realized that I do have a gift with writing, and I needed, you know, take my talents elsewhere. And so when I was trying to look for a major and all, I really love history and politics and stuff like that. But I felt like English was kind of like too vague and broad. And I felt like I already knew a lot, and I'm just always reading books and all. So I thought, how can I, you know, give a voice to the voiceless through my writing? And I thought that journalism was a great way to do that. And I just love talking to people. I'm a very outgoing person. So I love interviewing people, you know, just, you know, also like seeing other people's experience and like gaining knowledge from other people. Because I feel like there's never like enough knowledge in the world. So I do always like gain some type of knowledge whenever I'm talking to somebody. So I guess I just decided to continue with my journalism major.
Can you talk about, you know, your Palestinian roots? And a lot of people may not be very familiar with the conflict happening, years-long conflict happening in Palestine, between Palestine and Israel. How has that affected you, your family, and how does it compare to some of the things that are happening with African Americans in America?
Yeah, so the Palestinian-Israel conflict is a very oppressive conflict, and there's a lot of apartheid going on. So basically, the gist of it is the Israelis stole the land from the Palestinians. In 1948, there was a big war where many Palestinians were killed off. And keep in mind that the Palestinians are very, like, they're not, like, the Israelis are very superior compared to the Palestinians, who are very inferior to them. So yeah, they stole the land and they renamed Palestine to Israel. And so when I tell a lot of people like I'm Palestinian and those are my roots, they really don't know my heritage, because they're like, oh, you're from Israel. But it's not like that. So like in Palestine right now, Israel occupies about 75% of Palestine, and Palestinians only have like 25% of it. And they do occupy like the historic land. So like the Gaza Strip is occupied by Israelis. And I mean, like one way that I was affected is you have to go to checkpoint in order to get into your own, you know, country. So when I visited when I was 9 years old, as I stated before, because I'm now 21 years old, I had to go through like a very oppressive checkpoint. And when you can't pass to Palestine without going through this Israeli checkpoint. And this is like very strong militia, like it's very, you know, big policing on it. It's a lot of profiling going on. And so they pat you down, and sometimes you're even stuck at checkpoint for 3 days. I remember they actually arrested my father for about a week or so. And so we had to go off without him. And so he was just, you know, he was arrested for who knows what reason, because they find whatever reason to arrest you. But also, like, if you're very outspoken about the conflict, or you just say anything against it, they kind of will arrest you. Or just because, you know, since the media does not portray what's happening to Palestinians, and, you know, Arabs have a very negative stigma on them, and we're portrayed as terrorists because that's what American media has conveyed to everybody. But they don't see the actual terrorizing of Palestinians and the oppression that goes on. Like, even if you were to just throw a rock at an Israeli, you're going to be shot to death, you know? Like, it's just that inferiority that's going on. And so I think that it can relate to the conflict going on, you know, with African Americans and white people, because there's this sense of, you know, there's a side that's more superior and more privileged, and they're able to do things to the other side just because of, you know, systemic issues, and also because they just have that they just have those resources over them. And since there's so much racism inflicted in it, I guess, and since, you know, people, there are so many stereotypes on the other side, which is seen as more inferior, then they're just able to do those things. And, you know, there also is that similarity with the policing, because we do have policing on our side as well. You know, people are always being profiled. If you're Arab, like, and you just try to go against an Israeli, they'll literally put you to the ground with their knees on your head, and sometimes even just shoot you just because you're Arab. So yeah, it's a very sad and tragic thing on both ends. And I feel like a lot of it is because of U.S. intervention within, you know, Palestine and stuff, that's kind of escalated the situation and made it worse. And because, you know, the U.S. is giving resources to, you know, like you said, like to white people and, you know, to the privileged, and just to like Israelis and stuff, they're able to do things to make us feel inferior.
As a budding journalist, how do you think media can better cover this conflict in a way that makes people more aware of some of the situations that you and your family have gone through, and what other Palestinians are going through?
Yeah, so I feel like, you know, as a, you know, just being Palestinian, you have to be very wary of what you say, because anything that you say can even put you or your family in danger. But I feel like if you're speaking the truth, and like with journalism, just like with any other story, if you're literally interviewing somebody, the story tells itself. It's like, these are factual informations. Like, there is a victim and then there is a oppressor, and it's not like it's not something that's rocket science that you can't figure it out. Like, it is clear. And there's also like a lot of footage with Israelis like terrorizing Palestinians, and you know, most of the time they take it down in the media, but if you're able to still see that, then it's, you just realize how heartbreaking it is. Like, these are even children who, you know, are being stripped away from their families. You know, their families are being killed. I know I've had a lot of family back home who was just killed. You know, it's just like, sometimes you even dread, you know, one of your family members calling from Palestine, because you're not aware if they're calling to tell you that another family member died, or if they're in trouble themselves. But actually, thankfully, in my town, there's not really that big of a militia, but I know like literally miles away, like maybe less than 100 miles away, there is that militia presence there. So yeah, but like I was saying with journalism, I think that it's the quotes and the interviews. Thanks, Jeremy. But I think that the quotes and the interviews, they kind of tell the story themselves. So it's not like something that you can get away from. So yeah.
So kind of lastly, give people an idea of some of the stuff that you're working on in Village Free Press for future coverage, stuff that we may not have published yet, but that you're in the process of reporting and writing.
Yeah, so I was just so right now I'm working on a full white district story with kind of like the elementary schools, so like Berkeley, Hillside, May Road, Melrose. I actually went to Jane Addams, so I was District 89. You know, just the elementary districts, and I'm kind of just talking about the transitioning back to hybrid learning. How's it been going so far? What's the percentage of people? Why some people decided to stay home? Why some people decided to go away? But I think what I've been figuring out with that is because a lot of people, you know, being stuck online, I know even as a college student, it's very like depressing, because you do want that in-person learning. It's just a whole different setting, and it just makes you feel, I guess, more motivated. And it just, you know, you just sometimes need that energy, that environment, that air. Because sometimes I'm even stuck in my dorm room for like weeks or even days, and even if the only time I'm leaving is to shower, to go to the bathroom, but like I won't go downstairs. I won't even go outside to Chicago downtown, because especially because of this weather. But yeah, that's one story. I also just wrote a story about, you know, Lindop reopening, because I think they're one of the like last districts to open for hybrid learning. But I did attend the reopening event, and everyone was so nice. And yeah, everyone was so nice, and I can tell that the students were like really excited to get back, and I gained a lot of, information from that. Another thing is I wrote about the Lintop newsletter, which I was like so phenomenal when I was hearing about it. Like I was interviewing one student and he was so wise, and I was just like, wow, like these 7th graders and these 8th graders are 10 times more, knowledgeable and wise than we were when I was, a 7th or 8th grader myself. And they just like so passionate about what they're doing. And they just want to write about current events and, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is just amazing because, all of the tragic events that are happening right now, but they're putting it in a way that can uplift and educate others. So I think that it was like really, really inspiring, like even like saying it myself. And another thing I also wrote about Miss Connie Riles. Her and a teacher and some students, they have this thing where they kind of just go on in the community and they help others. I know she was telling me like sometimes they would even shovel snows for the elderly, which is just, I think that that's also like a really, this is for Roosevelt Middle School. I think that's also like a really amazing thing, because I think that you're just trying to give back to the community and, helping out the elderly. And, a lot of times I feel like people say like the kids in this generation are like really ignorant or like, selfish or, and they're not like selfless. But I think that story itself highlights that these students and these kids are willing to, help others and willing to like learn from all others and talk to the elderly and just help the community itself. So I think that that's also a really inspiring thing. And yeah, I just hope to work on more educational stuff and kind of just going back to Proviso East, giving back to the community and just writing about the communities itself.
Well, I appreciate you, your services, and thanks for talking to me today. We hope to be talking to you more often in this format too.
I thank you so much for having me. It was, I'm willing to do this whenever, and yeah.
Well, thanks, Renine, and thanks everybody who came and listened. We want to make sure that we do these more often. So we'll probably be coming on. Since it's an election season, we might be doing this every other day, I feel like, because there's so many different candidates. So we want to be able to talk to as many candidates, interview as many candidates who are running for local offices and contested races in Proviso Township, at least the 9 suburbs that Village Free Press covers. So we'll be putting out more information about that in the future. But thank you. Thanks, Renine. I want to thank Liz Abuno for providing her insights and her knowledge. And thank the public for participating as well.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.